Once you've seen the level of stupid decisions a horror movie can throw at you, the smart ones feel a lot harder to come by. It's almost normal to go investigating the attics of abandoned psychiatric hospitals on Halloween night, or read aloud a blood curse engraved in some discarded human skin characters just happen to stumble across, or even have open, passionate sex whilst they're halfway through running for their life from a very strange, very stabby man in a mask. I guess impending death just puts you in the mood, right? The point stands that rational thinking in the middle of these life or death situations is pretty rare, and probably deserves some celebration. They might all die anyway most of the time, but at least they took their best shot at not dooming themselves to eternal hellfire in the process. You're the real MVPs. If this feels a little familiar, that's, well, because it is. Unfortunately, we had a problem with some footage and have had to re-upload with a few minor tweaks. Either way, I hope you enjoy it just as much this time around. I am still the most cleverest Ash from What Culture, and these are the 10 smartest decisions in horror movies. 10. Nightlights. Lights out. Whilst Lights Out might not be a patch on its original short movie, the Hollywood counterpart definitely ramps it up a notch by including some savvy decisions in the heat of being hunted down by a supernatural monster. Which is a pretty rare instance, to be honest, so credit where credit is due, people. The moment that really defines the protagonists as having their shit together comes when boyfriend Brett is being hunted by Diana, a malevolent spirit that manifests in the shadows and who is banished by light, now on a free-roaming rampage after cutting power to the central family home in the evening. Here, she manages to knock Brett's flashlight out of his hands, so he smartly grabs his phone to give her a blast of screen brightness instead. As they move outside, Diana gets the upper hand and manages to pin Brett down in a dark spot, to which he then wrangles his car keys out to drench her in his headlights, forcing her to disappear to danker climates. If anyone should get the Quick Thinking Award and deserves to be alive at the end of a movie, it is good old Brett and his innovation. Someone get this man a lightsaber. 9. Double tap. Scream. Sidney Prescott is one badass horror movie protagonist. Constrained by the rules of her own genre to be a final girl while still managing to recognise and subvert the expectations thrust upon her in that role, the first Scream movie sees her deliver a lovely piece of intelligent film work by putting down the villain not once, but twice. And then again 3 more times in the 3 other films as the franchise refused to die in much the same way. When Billy Loomis has been taken out at the end of the movie, good old horror film fanatic Randy predicts that he'll get back up for one last scare, since it's no fun when shooting someone actually kills them. Right on cue, Billy bolts upright, but Sidney is already prepared. Popping off one last bullet into his big smoke forehead, Billy is gone with a good and proper double tap. That she finishes the whole thing off with a satisfying one-liner of "not in my movie" just goes to show how far she's developed throughout the film. She's now calm, ready and calculated in her actions. That she didn't succumb to being shocked or dropping a weapon is just testament to how the movie has shaped her. 8. Backwards footsteps. The Shining. Let's be realistic for a moment. Danny Torrance really didn't have a say in getting himself bundled into looking after a remote hotel in the middle of winter. So we can't have at him for making a stupid decision there. That is his dad's fault. What he and his mother do instead is make the most of a bad situation, figuring out the best way to combat the increasingly insane Jack as he runs around with an axe and a taste for violent murder, managing to evade him through a series of excellent choices. Wendy herself should be given some credit, since although a character is often focused on for her hysterics, she's still got it together enough to arm herself, smack Jack upside the head, and trap him in a pantry whilst checking her escape options. Her maternal instincts save the Torrances more than once, but it's Danny's clever trick that really takes the biscuit here. Upon looking at the snow outside the hotel, he walks backwards to leave misleading footsteps in the snow, fooling his dad into running into the hedge maze, attempting to find him. It is an incredibly small moment, but one that proves stopping for a bit of quick thinking will do the trick when you're being hunted by a man intent on cleaving you in half. 6. Booby traps. A Nightmare on Elm Street. What are you gonna do when a dream demon has set his sights on you, and no moment outside of the waking world is safe from Freddy's deadly fingers? You bring him kicking and screaming into the real world, that's what, since the only way to take down a nightmare is to banish it in reality. Nancy knew this and enacted a series of events to make it happen in excellent style, setting an alarm clock to bring her hurtling back into consciousness with Freddy in tow before sending him away by resolutely deciding he doesn't scare her anymore. Where everyone else had to succumb to some seriously intense night terrors, Nancy came up with a real plan to fight back against him, enlisting the help of some booby traps along the way and letting her journal guide those who would next come up against the burned baddie. Even if the end of the original film doesn't appear to be all good, it's a smart decision played out in the middle of one giant mess of a situation that turns out right in the end of the series. Long live Nancy and her badass brain. 5. Chainsaw Arm. Evil Dead 2. So Ash, and that's not me, that is the other Ash, but still, has gone out to a cabin in the woods for a remote vacation that all goes horribly wrong. Playing a tape recorder from an archaeological dig releases an ancient evil, possessing his girlfriend Linda and turning her into a deadite, meaning he has to off her with a shovel and bury her near said cabin. Things aren't looking good, but they get worse when the decapitated head comes back, bites him, and leads to him having a serious case of possessed hand syndrome. Bit of a medical mystery, that one, the only cure being to cut the thing off with a nearby chainsaw. Connect the dots here. There's a man missing his extremities, a perfectly usable chainsaw, and some modifications that are simple enough to make it attachable at the stump. Cue Ash running around with a choppy arm that he then uses to fend off the impending zombie invasion with both style and ease. The ultimate combo. You can't tell me that this isn't the smartest choice any horror movie protagonist has ever made. He's literally got a chainsaw arm. How useful is that? 4. Erin. You're next. If you ever want to be anyone in a horror movie, and that's probably an incredibly ill-advised idea considering all the death and maiming, you'd want to be Erin. And you should be like Erin in everyday life, since she's a clear badass who makes all the right choices as she almost single-handedly takes down a home invasion racket and lives to see the end of it. Armed with survivalist training from a strange upbringing that allows her to set up brutally effective traps, Erin is the sort of person that can take down a group of professional killers with an old blender, a camera flash, and a bit of old string, albeit if a maul is attached to the other end, but still. And it's not just her techniques for taking down her assailants that are clever, but her reactions and preparations as well. When cornered, she punches straight for the throat, and when attacked, she plays dead. She constantly has one up on the invaders, and isn't afraid to pummel them into raspberry jam when the time calls for it. Good thinking, Erin. 3. Copper Wire. The Thing. The Thing's assessment of impending doom is far more literal. When a group of Antarctic researchers are attacked and assimilated by a recently defrosted alien, MacReady takes fate into his own hands by tying up the crew and checking on their humanity. Slowly working his way through a line of his friends, he takes a blood sample and prods a hot copper wire into it, as the theory is that the Thing taking over their bodies will react and defend itself no matter what form it's in. Standing by with flamethrowers, MacReady finds one of his team has been infected, and it is not the one he suspected. Either way, it's a genius idea, one that offers a very public outing of any alien pretenders to the whole crew and allows for them to be quickly dispatched of should any anomalies turn up. The only thing that was maybe overlooked was sticking a bunch of tied up men together in the same room as a hungry alien life form that latches on to any living organism near, since Windows then gets his head turned into cat food. You win some, you lose some, I guess. 2. I'm Out. The Taking of Deborah Logan. It's one thing to agree to work on a documentary about an elderly woman with Alzheimer's disease as she's interviewed and reminisces on what memories she has left. It's another thing entirely to get sucked into a supernatural showdown where she's speaking in tongues and discovered to be connected to a ritual cannibalistic murderer that disappeared some time ago. Learning that information gets a swift no thanks from documentarian Gavin, who decides that it's all a bit too much for him and gets out of there scot-free before anything nasty happens. Let's just say it was a good thing he left when he did, when you learn the fates of the other 2 members of the filming crew. Hanging out with an insane woman intent on communicating with evil itself really isn't how you should be spending your weekends. Also, special shout out to Event Horizon for following a similar smart idea by deciding to get the hell out of space when they learn the vessel they're investigating is compromised, even if they didn't manage to actually see it through. We're leaving will forever be the most intelligent decision one can make in the face of discovering demonic forces intent on feasting on your eternal soul. 1. Quarantine. Alien. Sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you push for the smart decision. The people around you will continue to make bad choices. Take Ripley's stance in Alien on following the quarantine procedure. If they'd all actually listened to her as the acting officer rather than letting the infected Kane back on board, the whole horror of this film could have been avoided entirely. But hey, it sucks to be them since they all die in the end, with Ripley and Jones the only ones living to tell anyone about it. That's what you get for not listening. Ripley's savvy, life-saving antics don't stop there, however, with her choice of blowing the airlock whilst in her escape pod being one of the best decisions she could have made upon learning a near-unkillable giant alien has curled up on her ship and threatens both her, and more importantly her cat, if she doesn't sort it out. While many would have instinctively tried to ineffectively attack or hide, Ripley manages to execute an entirely level-headed response that lets her keep her life. Just another reason Ripley is the OG horror badass. And that's our list. What is your favourite smart decision in a horror movie? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. I've been Ash and this has been What Culture. Make sure to subscribe to the What Culture YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. Thanks for watching.